Super Typhoon Mawar is rapidly approaching Guam at this time and is looking to be an exceptionally dangerous situation as it has winds of 155 miles per hour and a pressure of 923 millibars as of just over an hour ago from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. It's at 12.2 degrees north, 146.1 degrees east, and Super Typhoon Mawar is posing an exceptionally dangerous situation to Guam at this time as it moves towards the island. The storm will likely strike Guam or make a very close call as a super typhoon or just below a super typhoon as this storm is undergoing an eyewall replacement cycle. You'll notice that eye is beginning to shrink at this time, and you'll also notice a somewhat lopsided appearance, also taking some points off of where we think the intensity is at this time. So that's what we're seeing there. However, after this eyewall replacement cycle is complete, the winds will ramp back up, and in the process, the storm is getting larger, so it's going to be producing heavier rain and higher storm surge. So eyewall replacement cycle overall not good news, but the maximum wind speeds, that might be the saving grace as this moves through Guam. They could be a bit weaker. However, a super typhoon or a strong typhoon just below that is likely to strike or make a very close call to Guam. Speaking of which, typhoon warnings are in place for Guam and coastal waters of Rota, with tropical storm warnings in place for Tainan and coastal waters of Saipan at this time. Typhoon warnings mean that within the next 24 hours or so, typhoon conditions are expected in the given regions. Tropical storm warnings are for tropical storm conditions instead. Regardless of that, all areas here within warning should be staying tuned to local officials for the latest information, and perhaps broadcast media will also be live later today, so be sure to check that out to talk about this storm as it does move through. Let's talk about the weather setup now. Firstly, sea surface temperatures. Where the storm is currently located, it has 29 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures. You need 26 or higher in order for a storm to be able to maintain typhoon intensity. As the storm moves westward after moving through Guam, it's going to move into even more favorable 30 or 31 degrees Celsius waters, which are going to allow this system to remain just as strong, if not strengthen further, as it makes its march west towards the Philippines, Taiwan, China, areas like that. More in the forecast here soon. Let's talk about wind shear and water vapor. Water vapor is the imagery overlaid here, and then that wind shear vector is over that. So the wind shear, you got 35, 40 knots over the southern side of the storm, and that shear vector there is easterly, so it's coming from the east and moving west. And that's why the storm had that lopsided appearance, and you can still see that there. It's because the storm is getting sheared a bit because it is a bit decoupled from the upper level anticyclone that it should be over at this time. That should be resolved here relatively soon, but that and an eyewall replacement cycle are taking off some points from its overall intensity there. All right, well, let's get into the official forecast now at this time. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued this. This was issued as of less than an hour ago. So, in 1 day's time, 24 hours from now, the storm should have just passed Guam and will likely remain a violent typhoon with winds of 145 miles per hour and 910 millibars, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. This is 10-minute converted to 1-minute winds, just for your information. When it comes to day two here, 48 hours out, this will likely be a very strong typhoon, 130 mile an hour winds, 925 millibar pressure, and these winds are probably a bit low, at least with the wind pressure relationships that we know of in the Western Pacific Ocean, but still, this is the official forecast. And then as you move out, this is going to overall remain a violent typhoon. It's going to re-strengthen up to that in days 3, 4, and 5 as it moves in the general direction of the Philippines and Taiwan, with northern chunks of Luzon potentially getting tropical storm force winds by the time we do get to 5 days out. However, a direct landfall within the next 5 days is not forecast for any other land areas than perhaps Guam. However, that does not mean that within the next week or so, 6, 7 days, Taiwan or the Philippines are going to be in direct danger from the system. So please keep an eye on this closely. If you're in Taiwan or the Philippines, come back to us. We'll have daily videos and a live stream tonight regarding this. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below as well. Let's talk about the other forecast here. This is courtesy of the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. They're expecting this to strengthen up to a Category 5 here before striking Guam. Not so sure that's going to remain the case because of the eyewall replacement cycle, but that's the current thinking from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center before this does move off and strengthen up into a Category 5 that it will remain to be over days 3 and 4 before weakening down to a Category 4 5 days out. So some things that are similar between the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and the Japan Meteorological Agency. Firstly, the tracks are relatively similar. The storm's going to move through or just miss Guam, and then it's going to move westward, generally having a possibility of tropical storm force winds in Luzon, however, not Taiwan just yet, but no direct landfalls forecast. Some differences are that the 1 minute sustained winds are expected to be significantly higher on the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, with them overtly calling for a super typhoon, basically for the entirety of this storm's forecast period. So that's a bit of a difference between the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and the Japan Meteorological Agency. The JTWC also overtly calling for this to be a Category 5 here on days 3 and 4, but again, direct impacts there to the Philippines, a possibility by 5 days out. However, no landfall. That also agreed upon by the Japan Meteorological Agency. All right, well, let's take a look at some weather model data. First things first, let's take a look at this, what I like to call a condition matrix. When it comes to sea surface temperatures, the GFS and the H-WRF both show favorable conditions. However, the GFS shows higher temperatures. Those are likely more accurate, as we saw those current observations earlier than the H-WRF. When it comes to wind shear, we're looking at moderate to maybe some stronger shear here over the next day or so before that really begins to drop off as we head into May 25th and 26th. So that's when the storm is really going to be able to boom and strengthen over the next few days. And finally, our mid-level relative humidity, which is our moisture in the atmosphere, is looking to be moderate to high. So all conditions are looking to be moderately good to very good. So regardless of what currently is happening, this is going to be moving into a very favorable area for it to strengthen with time before it does head towards the Philippines, Taiwan. So you guys need to be keeping an eye on this, but Guam, you're the most immediate threat. You need to be rushing your preparations to completion. All right, so here are a couple of different weather model solutions for rainfall. You'll notice there over Guam, both models showing well over 250 millimeters likely to fall there, perhaps higher than that, 350, 400 millimeters. For context, that's going to be about 8 inches of rain. So that's something to note there. Every 100 millimeters or so is about 4 inches of rain, just as a nice little conversion there. But you can see the model solutions there. Significant rainfall expected over the forecast period, and then significant rainfall will occur in whichever areas it does end up making landfall, Philippines or Taiwan, if it does end up making landfall farther out, but that's not within the scope of this forecast period. That's outside of 5 days. Well, you can see here on the left side, this is what the storm could look like as it evolves through the Western Pacific, getting a rather large eye there and becoming a very robust storm. Wouldn't be shocked if that does end up happening, as the storm is undergoing an Iowa replacement cycle. On the right side, you'll notice here this super ensemble forecast system that takes a bunch of different weather models, in this case the European, the American, and the United Kingdom. It meshes them all together and then gives you a weighted forecast for how this storm is expected to move. And you'll notice here that the tracks are very similar to the forecasted tracks given by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and the Japan Meteorological Agency. And you'll notice some outliers showing this recurving well before it would hit land beyond Guam, and then some showing it hitting land directly, Luzon, Taiwan, areas like that. But again, that's beyond 5 days. Although most models are in good agreement that this is going to make a very close call to or directly strike Guam. So if you're in Guam, if you're in Tanan, Saipan, or Rota, you need to be watching this very closely, as impacts are expected for all islands there in the Micronesian chain. All right, well, let's talk about preparations. This is how you can prepare for this thing. You need to get moving when a storm threatens, so make sure that you're protecting your home, covering windows, securing doors and loose items. Determine your sheltering options, things like that. Know your evacuation routes and orders. Stay tuned to local officials for that. Help your neighbors, especially vulnerable people, if you think they don't know about the storm or you know they're going to need help. And make sure that you're readying your to-go bag, things like that. If you do have a plan to evacuate, this should have been completed a while ago. You don't really have time to do this now. However, I still want to keep this in here in case someone watches this video after this strikes Guam. It's in the Philippines, Taiwan, and this ends up being needed for you. All right, let's talk about how to stay protected during a storm. If you're in Guam, this is what you need to be listening to right now. Stay safe from water and wind. Know your safe places for those. Water's higher ground, wind is lower ground. So depending on the given hazard, make sure that you're in the right spot. Have a way to get weather alerts and forecast updates. If you have a NOAA weather radio, that's great. We're going to be live later today. You can also stay tuned to local broadcast media. There are also going to be other places that'll be providing coverage as well. So numerous sources here for information as this storm moves through. Keep in mind that impacts can be felt far in from the coast, especially rainfall and damaging winds. However, it's likely that storm surge is going to remain within those first few miles of coast there, although given how small Guam, Rota are in particular, the entire island could be submerged in storm surge for a brief time. Listen to local officials and avoid travel unless ordered to evacuate. That's also a good idea. So if in Guam, you need to be finalizing your preparations right now. And finally, after the storm, after this moves through, if you're evacuated, only return home when it's safe to do so. If you are home, remain vigilant as hazards remain. That'll be heat, down power lines, floodwaters, and more. Cleanup safety is important. Don't push yourself too hard and check in on your neighbors. Only use power generators 20 feet from your home. You don't want to get carbon monoxide poisoning. And finally, prepare for the likelihood that your communications are going to get cut off as power to cell towers are going to be shut down after the system moves through. All right, well, with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope it was insightful. We do appreciate it. If you liked it, you can hit the like button. If you didn't, you know where that button is. You can join our Discord community for more information on the storm and hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this. You can also leave a comment if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and be sure to check out our live stream we're going to have later today. You can turn on notifications for that as well. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you at the live stream later today or in the next video tomorrow on this storm.